So my discussion here is healing from addiction through God, through God's mercy. When it comes to treating people that struggle with anything, it's first to have a good definition of what a person is. And the Catholic Church tends to look at a classical Greek definition of the human person, which points to the fact that we're not just matter or just physical, but we're also spiritual. And that spiritual side of us is eternal. The Greek philosophers had discovered that just through reason, that there is an ultimate reason why we're here. And there's almost an immaterial or a spiritual part of us that's even greater than our physical bodies. They may call it the good or different terms like that, but they realize that there is a purpose, and that purpose is immortal. And Socrates and Plato and Aristotle had spoken to that. And then, of course, as we come to Catholic saints like St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas, they began to incorporate Christian principles within Greco-Roman thought, philosophy, where they would discuss that we're more than just biochemical reactions. We're more than just physical beings walking around, but we're more so spiritual. And that spiritual aspect of us, which is the soul, comes from something that's eternal. And when the material passes away, because it's temporal, our souls will continue on to the eternal. And they call the eternal God. The Greek philosophers would call it the good. So there was a general understanding that as we live our lives, we understand that there's an ultimate good that we're moving towards. With the understanding of the good, we realize that there is things that are not good. And from a Catholic point of view, we coined the phrase evil, or a classical definition that evil is the privation of the good or the absence of the good. And we see that in our daily experience. We experience that privation of good, both physically in our bodies. I'm coughing because I have allergies, and so I don't think God created us to have allergies. But it's the privation of not having perfect health. There's moral evil. We know that we should treat each other good, but at times we choose not to, and that's called a moral evil, and that's a privation of the good. There's also metaphysical evil. Like I live in Oklahoma, and we experience a phenomenon called tornadoes. Now, we know instinctively that tornadoes aren't necessarily good. It's part of nature, but when we have a tornado, it's scary, and property is destroyed, and people are harmed. So that's metaphysical. We call it metaphysical evil. We realize that our tornado is not necessarily good, that nature should not be warring against humanity. And there's different things. So that's where we get our idea about evil. So on that topic, we look at addiction. Even though somebody may be trapped or may enjoy it, but yet at some point they realize that this is really not good. The classical definition of addiction is something that somebody is bound to or confined by, and that bondage results in self-destructive and self-defeating behaviors. So an addiction, classically defined, is not a good thing. It takes away from our human dignity. It takes away from our well-being. It takes away from the good of ourselves and our families and our communities. It is recognized as something that is not good. As we look at statistics, we see the impact. I'm just going to go through this briefly. In terms of loss, people that are struggling with addictions, in terms of treating addictions, it costs our country billions of dollars every single year. Drug trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar industry around the world. 60% of drugs that are moved around the planet come to the United States. There's a high percentage of drug-related offenses that cause people to end up going to prison. When it comes to divorce, there's a high rate of divorce that has happened because of addiction. If either one or two of the members of that family are addicted. When we look at school dropout rates, the majority of kids that drop out of school tend to be addicted to some type of substance. When it comes to instances of child abuse, more than 50% of parents that are involved in child abuse are addicted to some type of substance. When it comes to workforce loss, they say that sometimes it could be half of the workforce, maybe under some kind of influence, or because of that influence, they either drop out of the workforce or underproduce. In terms of causation, why it happens, there's many different things. It could be cultural reasons, it could be spiritual reasons. When I look at spirituality, addiction for some people can almost be like an idol. It could be something that people go to for healing, for solace. So in some people's lives, an addiction becomes an idol. Or it also points to the fact of people are longing for something to make them whole, to give them a sense of peace or joy, and they may look inadvertently towards that addictive substance. Their particular concern is sexual addiction. Again, sexual addiction is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it touches everybody in most families and most people's lives. We live in a culture where we're taught not to view the human person the way God views human people. And so human sex trafficking is a multi-billion-dollar industry around the world. And it's because of the addiction. Addictions can even be seen in foods when it comes to carbohydrate addiction, or people eating foods that are harmful to the body. And I think because of that, we see a significant rise of diabetes. I read a statistic that right now about 86 million people are pre-diabetic because they're eating the wrong foods, or they may be addicted to the wrong foods that are not healthy for them. And then, of course, there's eating disorders, where people may have an inappropriate relationship with food. When we talk about diabetes, there's certain ethnic groups that struggle more with it just because of the kind of foods that they're eating that they find themselves addicted to. So, and that's a huge problem in our country. It is proven through medical science that certain types of drugs alter brain chemistry. And again, this is a 3-hour lecture, but there's evidence that when people abuse certain substances, it actually damages or restructures the brain. And so neurochemicals don't act the way they need to, and people become neurologically dependent upon that particular addictive behavior. So it brings us to the role of spirituality. I don't believe it's the only solution, but I think it's a significant part of the solution. And I think one method that I found helpful is the 12-step. 12-step is, everybody's heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's founded in 1930. And I think the principles could be used as a way of finding God's mercy in the middle of addictive behaviors. The first step is admitting that we've become powerless over the addiction. It's being honest and admitting that our lives have become unmanageable. That's the first step. It's admitting. Step number 2 is coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Recognizing that using addiction as a power, we're looking to a benevolent power. So coming to believe that only something greater than myself can bring me to a place of sanity, because the way I've been living has been insane. Step number 3 is making a decision, not a coerce, but an honest decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God. So it's making a confession. And also it's a cognitive, it's an intellectual choice to turn my life over to the care of God. Step number 4, making a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. That means being willing to take a look at myself as I actually am, not as I think I am, but actually as I am. What is the impact of what I have done to myself and other people? And that's very difficult because some people have never had the opportunity to take a look at themselves as they really are. Step 5 is admitting to God and to ourselves and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And so in Catholicism, we call that act of reconciliation or confession. Is going to another human person in the image who stands as Christ and sharing the exact nature of our wrongs. So it's going to another human being and being honest about what I have done. And that for a lot of people, that's very scary. But part of it is being accountable to another human being. Number 6, step 6, being ready to have God remove all of our defects, right? Asking God for healing, being ready to say, okay, God, I acknowledge where I am. I need your help. Seven, humbly ask God to remove all those shortcomings. So it's an act of humility. And expecting God's mercy from that act of humility. Step number 8, then making a list of all the people that we have harmed with our behaviors. Start with our immediate family, work our way out, and just being honest about the impact. Some people may feel that the addiction you have done in private, but everybody's impacted by it. And being honest and being willing to make a list of everybody that I have harmed with my behaviors. Step 9, being willing to make a direct amends to that person if possible. Some people you may not be able to do that, but being willing to do penance and to make things right. Step 10, to continue to take personal inventory when we are wrong, promptly admitting it. Realize our instincts may be off, so if we have caused offense, apologize. And every day, take an inventory of how we're doing. Step 11, seek through prayer meditation to prove our contact with God. So work on our spiritual lives every single day to maintain the healing that God has given. And again, it's not a magic fix, but realize that we need God, that I need God every single moment of my life so I can live this life and not fall back into those traps. Step 7, having a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, be willing to carry that message to other people that may struggle. So it's penance. So find people that are worse off than you are, do acts of charity towards others. It's a way of making things right. Many people started ministries out of their own weaknesses as a way to make amends through God's grace. So this is a brief overview of God's mercy. God's mercy is available for us to be whole if we have been trapped in the realm of sin. So may God be merciful to us and may his grace be with us always. Thank you.